Hello and welcome everyone, this is Calebovitsch coming to you with another episode of Deck Check. Today we will be traveling back in time to the beginnings of Eternal and getting back to where we are right now and looking towards the future with the first and biggest tribal synergy in all of Eternal, the Strangers, especially that now we have a promo site for the Strangers as well. Also included, there's gonna be not one, but two different versions of a Stranger's deck in Throne. So sit back, watch, and enjoy the ride. The tale of the Horse Travelers, as I seem to be calling the Strangers these days, goes back to the main set, set 1, the Empty Throne. It has then continued through Omens of the Past into the second campaign called The Tale of Horus Traver. Horus Traver, not Horus Traveler, as some people seem to think it's his name, not Horse Traveler, but that is the joke that is intended in the name. So it is The Tale of Horse Travelers because there's more than one. Well, there's a million of them apparently. So there had been a lot of these units in all 5 colors that are called the Strangers, and there has been a whole thing about them wanting to get to the Eternal Throne, etc., etc. I'm not going to spoil any lore for you, probably, maybe a bit, but the lore in this game, especially when it comes to the Strangers and their whole tribe, their whole Borg thingy, is quite interesting. The whole lore in this game is quite interesting, and I would advise you to check it out. Try to find it somewhere on the internet, preferably on Direwolf's page, and within the campaign, The Tale of Horus Traver, the Horse Traveler. But yeah, in general, if you've been playing other card games, the easiest comparison of the Strangers is to Magic the Gathering's Slivers, the Sliver tribe, where each one gives the whole bunch, all the Slivers, all the Strangers in this case, some abilities. For example, +1 attack, +1 defense, flying, charge, what have you. To be honest, this archetype, this tribe, has not seen any play in a long while, because when it ended after the second campaign, there were no new Stranger cards, so if we got anything new for the deck, it would be spells, maybe some power, maybe some fixing, etc. But no true Strangers. Until now, or rather several days ago, when Direwolf did not one, but 2 things. One of which was kind of expected for a while now, but hey. First and biggest one was printing, or digitally printing, getting out a new promo called Traver's Farm. Yes, it is a colorless site that costs 4, that has a very nice name, a nice ring to it, that says Strangers cost 1 less. It has a Stranger's agenda, or rather Triumphant Stranger's agenda, that has Stranger's Mark, Reunite, and Unity Within, a new card that has not been seen in the game yet. Stranger's Mark turns a unit of your choice to a Stranger. Reunite lets you draw a Stranger of your choice from your deck. Unity Within says give one of your units and each of your units that shares a type with it, +1/+1, and hint hint, it's usually going to be Strangers, not always, but usually. And there is the biggest, baddest, strangest Stranger of them all, Triumphant Stranger. That is a 5-cost, rainbow-colored 1/1, +1/+1 for each Stranger, including him, unless you change his unit type, but I don't think that's possible. At the start of your turn, create and play a random Stranger from all amongst those from Omens of the Past and Empty Throne and the campaign. So, honestly, this site is a beautiful addition, something that really can hold a whole Stranger deck together, because it does everything. First of all, it's factionless, which means you can play it in a Stranger deck that is running any color combination. And I have seen, well, obviously the 5-color ones, the greediest ones, but I've even seen just 2-color Elysian Stranger decks lately in Throne. I'm not gonna cover those 2 extremes in this video, but they are out there like the rest of the Strangers. Anyway, Strangers cost 1 less. that is perfect because you can swarm the board even faster. But each piece of the agenda also shows great promise. I mean, when I was running a Stranger deck several weeks ago, it was Firetime Primal, like the one you've probably seen a moment ago. It was a Firetime Primal that was running a lot of Strangers, mainly the cheap ones. It was 4-color, it was running a lot of banners, it was running Strangers, removal, banners, and that's about it. It was not running any reunites. It was not a toolbox deck, because reunite says draw a stranger of your choice from your deck. But right now, given that you're running a Stranger's deck, you will be running Traver's Farm, which means you're at the same time running reunites. And reunites is your card draw for this side, because each side needs some protection, some card draw, some utility, and a huge unit. And when it comes together with great durability, like here, 4 for just 4, and a great passive ability, that's just cherry on the top, really. So once again, reunite is your card draw. So right now you can be running one of Strangers that you had not been running before, and you are going to see it in the decks that I'm going to show you. In both of them, because this is just version 1. There's going to be a second one in the second half of the video. Unity Within is something to make the board more stable, more in your favor. But Stranger's Mark is also a very interesting one, because it was a stranger-based card that, at least from what I've seen, had not seen any play previous to getting played from this site. But right now, it can do one of 3 things. First of all, you can now be running merchants or smugglers, and it can turn your merchant or smuggler into a stranger, so it can benefit from your whole Stranger tribe. Second of all, you can be running emblems, which I'm also running in this deck, and these emblems are producing like 3/3 Overwhelm Elementals or 3/1 Aegis Elementals, etc., etc. Now they can be turned into strangers. But that is not the end of the story yet. Third, and most inconspicuous use of Stranger's Mark is targeting an opposing unit that has Aegis, so that the effect fizzles and the Aegis gets taken down, and you can kill or bounce or eviscerate or exterminate or just devastate the said unit. So just pinging an Aegis off with no other effect. But remember, if you have no units in play and the only agenda spell you can play is Stranger's Mark, and the opponent has some units in play, you have to play it on one of their units. I'm sorry, that's just how it happens. Anyway, enough of me gushing over Traver's Farm. Let's get down to what a Stranger's deck would look like these days. So first of all, for sure, I would be running 25 power, no more. Really, it doesn't need any more. And I wouldn't be running any Seek powers for fixing, because A, you are running 4 common causes. If 2 units in your hand share a type, gain an influence of your choice. That's 1. Number 2, you can be running a ton of banners between all your colors. And number 3, you have a Seek power on legs, aka Horus Traver. That is a 1/1 for 1 that on summon you gain an influence of your choice. And the best part of this card is that if you don't have a specific color in play, you can play Traver's Farm on turn 4 on 4 power at least anyway, because it's factionless, and then you can play Reunite for free as the agenda spell, as the first agenda spell. Then you can grab Horus Traver, and Horus Traver costs 1 less, so he costs 0, and you can play him for 0, and you can gain that color. So honestly, the combination of Traver's Farm and Horus Traver is also a nice addition, so you have 8 additional ways of fixing here. Another argument for this deck not needing Seek powers is that each and every card has at most one influence requirement of a color, like you can see here on the removal suite. The only exception are the emblems, but if you're not playing them for decimating them, they still give you power. They still come into play not depleted, so it's all good. I forgot to mention one thing. The second thing that Direwolf did with with the introduction of Traver's Farm. They did the whole backstory of Varrot, hero in training, whom now we know is the Horus Traver version in Zalta, in the world of Zalta, from the Flame of Zalta. I mean, this was suspected, had been suspected for, I mean, ever since this card came into being spoiled several months ago, because Varrot is, if you switch the letters of Varrot, it could also say Traver. And people caught up to it like day one. I mean, not day one of the expansion, but day one of the spoiler even. So, yeah. Right now, Direwolf said, yep, that's the thing, alright. And they did something else. They changed his unit type from Warrior to Stranger. And rightfully so. And all his transformed forms, Varrot the Mighty, Varrot the Stealthy, and Varrot the Wise, are also Stranger X. I mean, one is the first one is a Gunslinger Stranger, the second one is a Rogue Stranger, and the third one is a Mage Stranger or something like that. I mean, the other type doesn't matter right now, but it's interesting that we have double types of Strangers. Also, hints to the future, in the coming set 8, we will also be seeing some new Strangers, because yes, the Strangers had come to Zalta in force, in strength, and in many forms, many new forms indeed. Anyway, let's get to the deck, finally. Alright, so this deck honestly only needs 3 things: Strangers, removal, and power. And that's it. And the farm that ties everything together. This deck, in my opinion, doesn't need any additional card draw outside from what it already has here. I mean, in the Stranger suite, there is Clever Stranger, a 2/2 Stranger, Praxis 1 for 4, that has Warp and says Strangers have Warp. Whether you have it in play or your opponent has it in play, all Strangers have Warp, which means you can start playing Strangers off the top of your deck, and warping cards is semi-kind-of-ish like drawing cards. And if you also have Traver's Farm in play, it means each Stranger costs 1 less, so we can chain Strangers from the top of your deck, like play 2 or 3 of them in a row, and that is serious card advantage right here, right now, or rather, right in the game. So that is one source of card advantage. The other one is Traver's Farm, because first or maybe not first, but in the course of it being in play, it reunites, it draws you a card, but you also have 4 copies of Sodi Spellshaper, 2 cost +1/+1 Elysian weapon that says when the wielder hits the enemy player, draw a card. Also has the option of playing an Equivocate, which means you're playing 8 Equivocates in this deck. Anyway, I am running FTP. Previously, I was also running Shadow, but I thought to myself, okay, why am I running Shadow? Because when you type in Stranger, and, well, this has to be an aggro deck, at least in my perception. If you go through 1-cost Strangers, you have the red one, the blue one, and the factionless one. So you can be running 12 1-drops, and that is a great option for an aggro deck. But if you look at 2-drop Strangers, aside from all the factionless ones that you don't need to be running, you only had Hairtrigger Strangers, the Stonescar one, and Grim Stranger, one of the better Strangers out there, the Feln one. Both of them have Shadow. So if you were not running Shadow, you did not have any 2-drops, so we only had 1-drops and then up to 3-drops. Fortunately, with the change to Varrot, Hero in Training, you now have also the ability to play those as your 2-drops. So right now, this deck is running 12 1-drops and 4 2-drops, and can drop Shadow altogether, because Shadow was only for those 8 Strangers, and it was for some removal, but we have a ton of removal in these 3 Gen of colors, so no more are necessary. Next, after these 16 cheap Strangers, you have 4 copies of Determined Stranger, aka Muscle Sliver, the 3-cost time one that says Strangers have +1/+1. And this is one of the main reasons, the other one in my opinion being Sodi Spellshaper, for running time in your Strangers deck. Otherwise, you could be running, for example, a Fire Primal Shadow deck with a ton of 1-drops and 2-drops, eschewing determined strangers, clever strangers, etc., but focusing on having 12 1-drops, 12 2-drops, then some soaring strangers, and that's about it, and swarming the board. I mean, that is also an option, but in that one you don't have your Sodi Spell Shapers for card draw. Okay, so we have the 20 cheap to medium strangers. After that, my favorite stranger is Soaring Stranger, a 4-cost 3/3 primal stranger that gives all strangers flying. And if your army suddenly flies, it is quite easy to just A-space and go phase. Believe you me. This is really the one that holds the deck together more than you might think. Previously I was running 4 of them, but now with Traver's Farm I limited this number to just 2. So as to include some one-offs as well. We have 2 copies of Clever Stranger, the one that gives everyone else also warp for card advantage. There is 1 copy of Swift Stranger, but I don't believe this one is that necessary for this deck. It is the 4-cost 3/3 fire one that gives charge. There is 1 copy of Battle Tested Stranger here as well. The 5-cost time one, that is a 2/2 but actually a 4/4. That is the double of Determined Stranger because it gives all strangers +2/+2. I'm not running more of them because this is a 5-cost card and you're just running 25 power, so I wanted to limit cards that cost more than 4 just to these 3, honestly. And if you're tutoring for them with Traver's Farm, they even cost just 4, 5 and 5 respectively. Next up, Fortunate Stranger, and many people had been wondering why I'm running this one. It is a 6-cost Elysian 3/3 Stranger that says when a player plays a stranger, including this one, that player draws a card. And that is the other end of Clever Stranger. And honestly, if you're playing Traver's Farm on 4 and you have a rather empty hand, you can either on that turn or on the following turn, if you can defend the farm, reunite and play Fortunate Stranger for 5 and start drawing cards. Or you can just go for a Towering Stranger on turn 5, the 6, or when you have Traver's Farm and play a 5-cost Skycrag one, that is a 7/7 Overwhelmer. Yep, that's a big one, alright. So this is your unit base. It is 28 units. You could go as high as 30, but I believe there is a balance of having them between 28 and 30, something along these lines. In the other version, you're gonna see also a really different version, but once again, that's gonna be in the second half of the video. And there is a timestamp somewhere in the description below if you want to skip the games and get to them later. As far as removal goes, we have 2 copies of Permafrost. I only included 2 copies because there are some units that have a permanent effect while they're in play. And there are some units with endurance, etc., etc. So I did not want to include 4 copies of that, especially that we can be running 4 copies of Torch. The deal 3 damage to unit or player, the 1-costing fire slow spell. But the best cards, the most tempo-oriented cards, are 4 copies of Equivocate, a 2-cost Elysian fast spell that puts a unit into its owner's hand, then transforms it into a random unit with the same cost. And remember, if the opponent decreases a cost of their unit, the equivocated copy of said, version of the unit is also that of a reduced cost. For example, if you give them back an Absorb Patriarch, they are getting a 2-cost, not a 3-cost. And that sometimes matters. That usually matters because you want to give them the lower cost more often than not. 4 copies of Sodi Spell Shaper, I've already talked about them. This is Equivocate on a stick that draws you cards, which is good and great and awesome. This is one of the better cards in this deck that is not a stranger. Traver's Farm, then Sodi Spell Shaper, then the rest of removal. And finishing things out, we have 4 copies of Display of Instinct, mainly because we can be running this display in these colors. And two things about this one are great. First, obviously deal 4 damage to an enemy. It can be a unit, it can be a site, it can be the opponent's noggin. Or negate an enemy spell, because in this version you have no protection from Harshuls and Harshul-like effects, like general board cleansers. So you have that here. So it's either a negate or just a burn spell. And an interesting fact here is that with you running 4 torches and 4 displays of instinct, they can go face, and if you have run your opponent down to 6 or 7 health, you can just point 2 of these at your opponent's portrait, and then you're just burning them out, just winning there, right then. As for the power base, 4 copies of Common Cause, 9 copies of Banners. I mean, you more often than not, you don't have influence issues in this deck. Then there's the rest of the power base, and here in this very aggressive one, I'm running 1 sigil and 3 emblems in each of the 3 colors. I am running those sigils because, yeah, there are effects such as Royal Decree or Ice Bolt that are rather prominent in Throne, and you don't want to screw yourself over such an effect. I mean, getting dealt 1 damage off of the emblems is not a huge issue because you are supposed to be the aggro, but I'm not running 4 copies of each because I want those sigils if an opponent plays an Ice Bolt on one of my strangers. Also, when you have an elemental in play and you have a Traverse farm in play, you can play Stranger's Mark on the elemental, turn it into a stranger for it to be flying, maybe not warping, but charging, getting bigger, etc, etc. Okay, that is enough for the theory for this version, for Horse Travelers FTP. I'm going to show you a couple of games right now. After those games, I'm going to show you a different version of the deck, 2 games with that deck, and then I'm gonna wrap things up with some final words. There are timestamps for everything in the description of the video, so let's check those games out. Hello and welcome to game 1 of FTP Horse Travelers. This one was taken, and all the games were taken on stream, but right now I'm doing a more extensive commentary on them. This hand is rather a keeper, despite the fact that we cannot play a stranger on 1 unless we draw a non-depleted blue source. But even if we play Hearty Stranger on 2 into Varret on turn 3, it is still a good opener. We have, well, Varret just takes all the advantages from playing strangers, just takes all their buffs. If you play Varret into either Sodi Spellshaper or Determined Stranger, it is a 3/4, so it transforms into Quick Shakes, and that is what you want to be doing, right? Right. Okay, so playing the Hearty Stranger, one of the Hearty Boys, then playing a Banner. I mean, you could also do it the other way around, but if I can have the power non-depleted. That just makes me feel better, honestly. Right now, in this game, we are playing against Stonescar aggro. This is going to be a rather difficult match. Here you have to determine who is the aggressor, who is the defender, and right now it seems we are the defender. Fortunately, the opponent missed their 3rd power drop, so we can just go for Varret and a 3rd power into a 4th power later on. And right now, if the board stays like this, we can stem the bleeding. Varret can block one of their, well, either the 3/3 or the 2/2 if the opponent attacks with them. And yeah, he also dodges Annihilate still. Wow. And this, him being a stranger, is the reason to run him in Throne nowadays. Okay, Stonescar Banner, the opponent found their 3rd power. But what are they going to do? If they're just attacking with the 3/3, that means Varret is playing his part, is playing his role. And a Smuggler. That one usually goes for something like a removal here. Yes, we could permafreeze one of those units, or we could just run out Swift Stranger. To have a 3/4 here as well. I mean, those X4s are quite good against 3Xs, right? Right? Basic combat math. Wow. Anyway, next turn we have several options. We could Sodi Spellshaper if they play a huge threat like Cha-Cha. We could go for, if we draw power, we could go for a Determined Stranger. if we draw a power, we could go for Traver's Farm into Permafrost, into grabbing a 1 cost or making our units bigger with the third card that has not yet been released. Unity Within, I believe, was the name. Making strangers bigger, I believe, was the game. Yeah, we're getting dealt 1 damage off of the Instigator. Casualties of the Cause kills Varret. That is a bummer. I thought to myself that I should get at least a Hardy Stranger from Traver's Farm. So I just took it all in here. A Display of Instinct. On the other hand, I just went for removing 2 and blocking 1. If I drew a power instead of Display of Instinct or another piece of removal, I would have done it differently. I permafroze the 3/3 that I don't want to have on the board. I mean, that can be on the board because I want to kill the 3/3 that actually deals us damage when we are when our units are getting destroyed. Black Hole War Leader, that one could be a problem. But I'm running a 3/3 Stranger to stop them dead in their tracks. I mean, if I draw a power, I would have gone for Battle-Tested Stranger probably. This is a strange attack, and right now I'm wondering if the opponent is playing Granite Coins in their deck, but it turns out they are very low on cards and just want to play an Impatient Pyromage to deal 2 damage to me, hopefully draw, I don't know, that was probably that power, especially given that they're not discarding anything right here, right now. And here I thought, yeah, it's finally time to go for Traver's Farm to make my Strangers cost less and reunite and get another Hardy Stranger to play it as a 0 cost 2/3 as a follow-up, so a 0 cost that is bigger than the opponent's units right now. And then we can either Sodi Spell Shaper or play those bigger Strangers, depending on what the opponent plays, depending on what we draw. Champion of Chaos is something we need to get rid of with Sodi Spell Shaper. And initially I thought about playing Unity Within on my units right now, but after some checking and seeing that I drew Emblem of Linrai, if I first play Stranger's Mark on one of my units and then play Varret, I can make Unity Within even bigger, because right now I can either play Varret and Battle-Tested Stranger and Unity Within next turn, but Cha-Cha is deadly and can be overwhelming, and that is dealing a lot of damage to us. So I opted to go for Sodi Spell Shaper, get that lady out of here, play Varret, after playing a power obviously, and did I decimate? I don't remember if I decimated or not. Yeah, I did. I mean, a 3/1 Aegis is always nice to have. And I still have 4 power to be able to play that Battle-Tested Stranger. But I believe I should have attacked before playing Varret, so they would not know what I honestly had in hand. And getting a Ruthless Stranger is great. It is a 0 cost 3/3 that we can follow it up with. So right now we have a huge advantage on the board. I'm just wishing for the opponent to miss out on 3rd fire. Oh wait, that's not happening. And for them not to have a Flame Blast in hand or in their market or getting fetched from the market. Midnight Gale. Okay, so I upgraded the opponent's Cha-Cha into a 4/3 flyer that can even gain lifesteal. I mean, that's just huge right here, right now. Okay, I opted to target Varret with the buff because he's factionless and the opponent could be running Annihilates and just kill my unit in response to that Unity Within. And I believe I want to attack with 1 or 2 units. Probably the bigger ones, leave those 4/4s be. I thought initially of just playing Display of Instinct on the flyer because we need to get rid of that. But if I don't do that, the opponent might be enticed to attack with their whole board if they have something else up their sleeve. Also, Display of Instinct right now is a negate as well. For example, if the opponent just plays Flame Blast first. Okay. The opponent is not blocking, so we're drawing the Clever Stranger. I know I could have warped him, but then I wouldn't have power up for Display of Instinct. And Verret is almost the Mighty, or the Stealthy in this case. So depending on what the opponent does, Galai, Shavka's Listener. Hopefully they won't get a torch here. And they're A spacing, which means, well, we can kill the flyer. I mean, if we didn't have any fast speed removal, we would die to 4 from the flyer and 2 from an unblocked unit. And we're taking just 2 damage and hoping the opponent did not grab a torch, and they don't have it, so it is 1 game up here. Let's head on to game number 2 now. And welcome to game number 2. And this is a rather similar hand, which means it's going to be a good hand, right? I mean, aside from one of the banners, isn't it the same hand? So let's see who we're playing against right now. Skycrag. Well, the question is it aggro or is it Spellcrag? Royal Decree. Yeah, it's probably Control. It could be Spellcrag. I believe they're gonna take out Horace's farm. Sorry, Traver's farm. But no, they opted to take out Verret himself. Okay, so this means I could just go for Sodi Spellshaper attack and start drawing cards. I have a redundant Spellshaper, that's 1. Number 2, if the opponent is playing a control deck, they are not running a lot of units, so I can just redraw the Spellshaper now. Grab that power here, so we can go to Traver's farm on the following turn. Champion of Fury. Okay, that's an unusual card in Spellcrag. So not 100% sure that is that. Could be something in between, like a burn, because that is literally a burn for Yeti. And given that I did not have any great things to do with Traver's farm, I just opted to go for the 3/3 elemental. Hailstorm. Okay. So we're just gonna go for Traver's farm, probably. No, sorry, just Verret. And we can decimate, we can play a second unit just to have some pressure on the board, just to keep the opponent on their toes. Yeah, so Verret is getting torched. And the opponent is drawing 2 cards main. Towering Stranger, yeah, that one's not gonna see any play anytime soon. And so I went for a power, I went for Traver's farm. And given that the opponent is running those 4/1s, I opted to go for a Reunite to cash in on the card right here, right now. And go for a Battle-Tested Stranger, because that's the biggest one I can play right now if the opponent cannot get rid of the farm. So I could, for example, play Stranger's Mark on my elemental, play Battle-Tested Stranger and have a 4/4 Exalted Elemental Stranger. No, it's not an elemental stranger. It turns into a stranger. So there is that. And the opponent plays Royal Decree, turning 1 card. And for a moment I thought it would be Battle-Tested Stranger, but in fact it was the Towering Stranger that got changed. Change. So right now we can still play Stranger's Mark here. Grab one of the 2 remaining powers, play it, play Battle-Tested Stranger, and now attack for 4. Well done. Now we just have some unity within. And then we're playing Triumphant Stranger. Garden of Omens, I'm guessing that one is going to take care of our 4/4, the right one. Yeah, it's taking care of the right one. And this is where having 3 sigils in the deck comes rather handy. Unity within here, so we turn it into a 3/3. We attack the site. And I'm not playing the second farm. Right now I have 6 power. I'm holding up both displays to protect the farm, to protect Triumphant Stranger, to protect my 3/3. And the opponent is playing another Garden of Omens. And I could just play Display of Instinct on their side, but I'd rather protect my unit. So we negated that Ice Bolt, so we can attack the site. Static Bolt just deals 2, which means they don't have another in hand, but they have a follow-up, probably, yeah, a Snowball. So we're negating the Snowball, so hopefully the unit survives. And then we can just kill the Garden of Omens. Nothing more? Yeah. I mean, if they had a torch, they would have just played they would have just played the torch. Okay, I'm attacking the side. The opponent is just down to 1 card in hand. I'm also opting to play a second Traverse farm so as to grab something. And it's probably going to be Fortunate Stranger, so that if the opponent destroys both of these units, I can start redrawing with Fortunate One. Crest of Fury doesn't do much here. Geoden Hurler, yeah, we've seen the Snowball. Alright, Unity within. The Fell one doesn't do much for us here. I believe it's Soaring Stranger attack for 10 in the air. And have Equivocate at the ready. I mean, I'm not equivocating now, I don't need to. A Hailstorm doesn't do anything. If the opponent plays... the opponent could have drawn a Prodigious Sorcery, decimated it, played a Hailstorm for 6. That would have been a problem. But right now, I don't believe they can find any answer to this question. And that means we are winning yet another game. Okay, so these were 2 games with the Fire Time Primal version of Strangers, but do not go anywhere. We're going back to the studio and I'm going to tell you about a second version of a Stranger deck. Yes, Horse Travelers 2. The Traveling Even Further would be the subtitle? Yeah, let's get to that right now. Hello and welcome back, everyone. Okay, so as promised, I'm going to show you a different version of a Stranger's deck, one that is equally good, or maybe even better. It's a slightly different take on this deck. Well, first of all, we're running a different third color. Elysian is still the basis, and that is because Hardy Stranger is a great 1-drop. Determined Stranger is a great buff. Alongside the one-offs of Battle-Tested Stranger and Fortunate Stranger. Soaring Stranger is amazing. And we have access to cards such as Equivocate, so the Spellshaper, and Permafrost. So what does green give us? Well, green color gives us Stand Together. Your units get +1/+1 and Aegis. So that is the initial draw for me to this version of this deck. But when I was browsing through Strangers, I opted to go for 1 copy of a Tireless Stranger, a 3/3 for 3 that says Strangers have Endurance, which means you can attack and block. But also, it means, get out, you Permafrost, you're not cursing my units anymore. Okay, but then, after taking a look at the Strangers some more, I found a very calm, a very unseen-like Stranger. The Meditative Stranger. If it had 2 types, it would be an Unseen Stranger, I'm guessing, at least from the artwork. Anyway, it's a 6-cost Huru Stranger, a 4/4, so it's a rather big one, that says Strangers have Aegis. So, opponent, whatever you want to do to my Strangers, no. Just no. Just don't. Just forget about it. So, we have a Meditative Stranger that we can tutor with Traverse Farm. So we have technically 5 copies of that, or 5 ways of getting that. We have 3 copies of Stand Together main deck. What? Only 3 copies, but it's a great card. Yes, but this version is also running 4 copies of Aurelian Merchant. And this is an honorary stranger. And over the course of some of my stream games, this one has the nickname of Horse Trader, not Horse Traveler, but Horse Trader, or Camel Trader, as someone else pointed out in the chat. So this is a 3-cost time merchant that gives you +1 max power and says you may choose a card from your hand to swap with a time card in your market. Now, Calebovitsch, why are you running merchants instead of smugglers? Well, dear viewer, because Sodi Spellshaper and Stand Together are such amazing cards. I want to be running 7 copies of each. I mean, 7 copies of each. Which means I have access to Sodi Spellshaper in 3 copies main deck and in 4 copies of the Merchant, because I am running the 4th copy of both Sodi Spellshaper and Stand Together in the market. One is more anti-control, the other one is more anti-mid-range or anti-aggro. And both of them have their great uses. And these are just below Traver's Farm as the best non-stranger cards in the deck. That is why I am running Time Merchant, because Sodi Spellshaper is Time Primal and Stand Together is Time Justice. So time is what ties it all together. So this version has 28 units. 4 of them are not strangers initially, but they can be turned into honorary strangers. We are not running emblems anymore because, yeah, this is slightly more power intense right now. And I found that, honestly, maybe aside from the last game you might have seen in this video, I usually do not want to decimate my my emblems that much. So yeah, the base of this deck is almost the same. We have Hardy Strangers, we have Horus Travers, we have Varets, aka the slightly bigger Horus Traver. We have 4 copies of Determined Stranger. We are up to 4 copies of Soaring Stranger instead of these Warp ones. But even though we don't have card draw from the Warp one, we have Fortunate Strangers, which are also Stranger / card draw. So we can tutor for them with Traver's Farm, etc., etc. And our Silver Bullets, our Toolbox Strangers, are Battle-Tested Stranger, the +2/+2 one, Tireless Stranger, that gives you Endurance, or rather Stranger's Endurance, Fortunate Stranger, that draws cards, and Meditative Stranger, that gives Aegis. And the removal suite of, well, we don't have Torch and Display of Instinct here, so I upped the game with Permafrosts. I included Stand Togethers, but I also included 4 copies of Armory's Choice. It is a 2-cost Combray spell, fast spell with 2 modes. It either gives one of your units +3/+3 and Overwhelm this turn, which is great because you're a rather aggressive deck that wants to attack each and every turn. But also, it has a mode of silencing an attacking enemy unit and putting it back to into the enemy hand. So it is both useful on the offensive and on the defensive, which is why I'm playing it over Finest Hour here. I'm not playing Finest Hour here because there's no space for that. There are no slots for that. So technically, the removal here are 4 Permafrosts, 4 Equivocates, 3 Sodi Spellshaper with another Sodi Spellshaper in the market. But we also have 7 tricks in the form of 4 Armory's Choices and 3 Stand Togethers. Now as for the market, we have a 4th copy of Sodi Spellshaper, we have a 4th copy of Stand Together, we have Kirin Ascendant as the anti-attachment card, that is also Flying Lifestealer and could be an honorary stranger as well. We have Battle-Tested Stranger, because remember, when you're following up the Time Merchant, you are usually not following it up with a 4 cost, you're usually following it up with a 5 cost, because this one ramps up. And this one is yeah, the follow-up, just that. I've also included 1 copy of Shenra Speaks here for the occasion when the opponent is winning on the ground and we can just grab something to reset the game. But this is actually a flex slot in the market and I do not have any ideas what to put here. What I do know is I don't want to be putting Bastion of the Dawn here because I had it here previously instead of Kirin Ascendant and it was just not working. And in the games that you're going to see in a moment, you could probably see the market is slightly different, because that was there was some flexing there, but right now it is as it is. As for the power base, we have 12 banners because we are not utilizing our any emblems. 4 copies of Common Cause yet again, and 9 sigils, with 4 copies of Primal Sigil because you want to be playing your Hardy Stranger on turn 1 as much as possible for you to be able to play a non-depleted banner on turn 2. So yeah, the core concept of this deck might be similar because it's a Stranger's deck with Traverse Farm, with card advantage, etc, etc. 4, 8, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 21, and 12. That's 35 out of the 50 cards that are included in this list that are not power are the same as the other deck. 15 are different. Those are the Stand Togethers, 2 Permafrosts, Armory's Choices, a couple of Strangers, and the Merchants. Obviously the power base is slightly different, but the game plan is, in my opinion, slightly different as well, because we do not have those burn spells, and instead of negates, we're running Stand Togethers. But you're all going to see how it works well in 2 games that I have prepared for you from one of my previous streams. So check them out right now. This is a hand in which we have all the power. We can play Varret on turn 2. We have a piece of removal. We have Sody Spellshaper, which is one of the better non-stranger cards in the deck. We have all the colors, but in this version it is also not that difficult to have all the colors. And the Determined Stranger is going to be a great follow-up to Varret as well. So yeah, Varret. Hopefully this opponent cannot do any bad stuff to bad things to Varret. Arachnophobia. Summon Nightfall. When the cursed unit dies, play a 1/1 spider with Deadly. Into Felrog's Choice, killing said unit, giving them a spider. And giving them back Arachnophobia. I hate spooters. But at least we're drawing an additional card off of Nightfall. The downside is we cannot play a non-depleted power source for our Determined Stranger. I could Armory's Choice that spider back to their hand, but given that I do have Traverse Farm here, I could just grab the flying one, the Soaring Stranger, or I could Sody Spellshaper their unit back to their hand. That is also an option. So right now I'm just opting to freeze their unit and start attacking. If the opponent wants to kill my dude, I can go for Stand Together, but I opted to just go for a Reunite and grab a good follow-up like the Meditative Stranger, aka Stand Together on Stranger Legs. Shattered hopes. Yep, my hopes of having that stranger have been shattered. Archgriffin Patriarch, the opponent is drawing 1 card here. And 'tis a battle-tested stranger. Now I think I want to go for some unity within here. It is rather possible. And I'll probably just attack and bait the opponent into blocking, because then I can either go for Armory's Choice or Stand Together. But I opted to be slightly more greedy, return a 5-cost unit to the opponent's hand, and draw 2 cards. One of them being... Wait, 2 cards? 1 card? Oh, sorry, that's just 1 Sody Spellshaper. Never mind. I was thinking of the previous game, I think. Yeah, Slay takes care of our unit. The opponent gets a Spooter and a Forbidden Rider Outcasts, giving us a Curse of Loneliness. Oh. Stranger's Mark. Yeah, I think I'm gonna make the Frozen Spider a Stranger. So let's get battle tested. Let's get Horus Traver, or what are we doing? What are we doing here? I mean, I want my Triumphant Stranger here for sure. I'm just thinking on what to do, what to do, what to do. I could also just play Horus Traver, have a blocker for the 1/1, and play either Sodi Spellshaper on it to bounce that 3/3 back, or have Armory's Choice at the ready. I mean, I could get that back with Equivocate, with Armory's Choice. There are a lot of options here. I just want my Triumphant Stranger to arrive. And if they're just attacking this way, well, that means we're not in that much trouble. I'm still opting to block because we are going to have our Triumphant one. To and fro. And the Equivocate that we played on Archgriffin Patriarch gave the opponent, yes, a Triumphant Stranger of their own. There was some jaw-dropping on my part during the game. So, opponent, redo. But, fun fact, the Traverse farm we had in play decreased the cost of their unit from 5 to 4, which means right now they got a 4 cost in hand. Anyway, I want to protect my Stranger with Send Together. I don't believe I care here. That one is just going to start producing a lot of Strangers, so it can be frozen. Sure, as long as you're not killing the farm. And Harshul. Okay, now we can stand together. I believe that freeze was just a debate. So the opponent's killing their own units off, and we still have our Triumphant Stranger that is frozen, but that doesn't matter, right? Right. Okay, so we're playing a unit during our turn. Empower Strangers, get +1/+1. That's not gonna make a lot of difference here. Also, I'm not playing anything else from my hand because, well, that one we already have in play is just gonna be a 1 Stranger army. And the second Equivocate gave the opponent a 4 cost, that is Clever Stranger, that is giving all Strangers warp, including ones I have. So thank you, opponent. Thank you very much. We're flying now. We're warping a Stranger. We're warping a Stranger. We're warping a Stranger. All of them cost 0. More Strangers, even more Strangers, then some Strangers, then Battle-Tested Stranger and attack. Or not. No, I thought for a moment and opted to not go for it in case the opponent has a Wrath of their own. So I just went for Varret and keeping a lot of cards open. Another Forbidden Rider Outcast, that's not gonna matter. And we can bounce the Rider. Play Battle-Tested Stranger. Oh, grab a free Battle-Tested Stranger. Play another Battle-Tested Stranger. A space. Didn't even need to do that. Also, thank you, opponent, for pitching in and playing that Clever Stranger. That really made my day, and it made the chat's day. I remember that. Okay. On to game 2. And by game 2, I obviously mean the game 2 of this deck, game 4 of the whole video, if you're keeping track. Yeah, this hand is rather good, but there's a strange thing happening. That is, I don't have a second Stranger, so my common cost cannot give me blue to play my first Stranger, but I still can play my Merchant on 3, and I can still probably play Traverse Farm on 4. And the opponent is playing some sort of a Praxis deck with Sand Warrior, turn 2, off of Grotov's Favored. Yes, that's the way to go, apparently. Yeah, this version still had Bastion of the Dawn. Into a Maran Stinger. Oi. Soaring Stranger. Well, Soaring Stranger is a second stranger, which means we can grab a primal here, finally. But do I want to merchant something out? Probably yes, probably one of those permafrosts. And at this point I was thinking of grabbing that Shenra Speaks, or the battle-tested stranger. But yeah, if the opponent is a go-wide version of a Praxis deck, and we grab another green source, that is just gonna make them very sad, and we want to make opponents sad, because we want to win. In a spectacular fashion. Oh wait, that was the previous game. Here in this one, we're just going for Traver's Farm. And I want to play Stranger's Mark on my Horse Trader. I also want to play two of my Hardy Strangers, two Hardy Boys. So that the Horse Trader is in 05. Opponent's playing a Waystone Fragment. And a Granadin. And they're just attacking face. No, I don't want any more Scorpions here. I'm going to take some damage. Now let's go for our Reunite and let's get something like maybe a battle-tested stranger here, so that everyone on our side of the board is bigger and better. And Untorchable. The Untorchables! A Grodov Evangel and an Oni Patrol and an Ash Elemental, so the opponent is going ultra wide here. Yeah. We're still taking 3 damage, hoping the opponent does not get to draw a Flame Blast once again. And right here, we can go for Unity Within, make the whole tribe bigger and better. Now I'm opting to go for a Soaring Stranger, apparently, into double Permafrost, into just attacking with 2 units, I believe. I mean, I was doing some math, and right now I have 21 damage in the air. Just in case something bad happens, I'm just attacking with 2 if the opponent has another charge unit, so that I can block up to 3 of their units. I mean, technically I could have just attacked with the 5/7 and then have had 21 damage for the opponent, exact lethal. But yeah, this is Traver's Farm at its best. All the modes came in handy. I mean, it turned our merchant into a 3/8 flyer. What's not to love? Okay, this is the last game that I'm going to show you today, but let's get back to the studio and talk about Strangers some more. I hope you did enjoy the games. I am going to show you what the future holds, at least as far as testing out Strangers go. After some thought, it came to me that really, when I'm playing Strangers, when I'm playing 3-color Strangers, I usually don't have that many problems with my influence. So I got a lot of questions in the chat on my Twitch stream. Why not include a 4th color? Why not include Shadow or Fire? And Shadow has several upsides here. First of all, I could be running a Grim Stranger here, and Grim Stranger is one of the better ones. It is a 2/2 for 2, a found one, that says when one of more strangers attack, deal that much damage to the defending player. And if you put Sodi Spellshaper on Grim Stranger, this says when the wielder hits the enemy player, draw a card. So if Grim Stranger is wielding a Sodi Spellshaper, what's happening is Grim Stranger and preferably some other strangers attack. Grim Stranger's ability procs. Opponent is getting hit by him. You're drawing a card off of Sodi Spellshaper. And if Grim Stranger hits the opponent's face during the attack, you're drawing a second card off of Sodi Spellshaper. Also, it is a rather good 2-drop. It just makes the deck faster. So I have included 4 more units here instead of 4 Armory's Choices. Those were the Grim Strangers. I also took down one Soaring Stranger because there is another Shadow Stranger that is rather nice here. Bereaved Stranger. I mean, if you could call a Bereaved Stranger nice, I mean, it's just sad, but it is a 5-cost Argent Port 4/4 Stranger that gives all strangers life steal. Simple as that. We could also tune our market slightly better. For example, instead of Kirin Ascendant, we could be running a Banish, just because we can. Because it not only removes enemy relics, but it also can take care of our unit. So we have a spot removal for stuff up to Tazbu in the market. I also included an Edict of Grotov here, because I wanted to have a negate. I wanted to have a game plan against Spellcrag, because this one can just put a blue or purple spell on the bottom of its owner's deck. This is not against units. This one is against spells, so that the opponent cannot go face with this. The power base needs some fixing for sure. This is a more unit-heavy deck. This is more greedy on the power base. I mean, we're running 13 banners now. Fortunately, and a fun thing about these decks, you have 12 neutral cards in here. And once again, you only need 1 pip of each influence to be able to run all the cards from this deck and from the market. Alright, I believe you're no stranger to horse travelers now, dear viewers. I do hope you did enjoy this video, and remember, if you did, click on subscribe. Simple as that. Alright, enough of chit chat, let's get to the digital tables and play some card games. Calebovitsch out. See you next week.